Hello.
Okay.
Oh, I need to get the live stream. I have not published yet.
What is something that happened in Google World this week that we're not going to talk about on the podcast?
Daydream.
No, we are going to talk about that on the podcast.
Are we now?
It needs to be something way more in the weeds. Okay, how about this? How about the $1 billion check that Google's cutting for journalistic outlets?
Google News Showcase is the official name of basically cards, story cards.
What's up, AM Dunes? We're good. Story cards. To me, it feels like a premium offering. Like it's going to be like an Apple News Plus type thing. Maybe it's better.
I don't...
They're not going to charge for it. That's not what I'm saying.
They're definitely not. But can you see Google doing subscription? I
don't know. I don't think they could do that with the current regulatory environment. The check is being cut because Google is trying to avoid having to cut an even larger check if there's a ruling against them when it comes to using news outlets' content.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the fundamental
That's
reason.
The fundamental thing. But at the, I don't know, news showcase. I don't see it being too big of an impact to how people consume news.
Yeah. What's up, Cameron? What's up, Peppercorn? Thanks for joining. We're going to be getting started here in a minute. Yeah, I don't think it's going to change how people consume news. I don't even think it's going to change. I mean, I don't know. I'm pessimistic about it in the Google News app because I don't know. I just don't feel like, I mean, personally, I don't read any of the high premium quality content or whatever in Apple News Plus.
Yeah,
it's all super. I mean, if you think about it, all that premium level content that Google's going to be paying for is all going to be like 5,000 word articles written by professional, like real journalists. I don't know, not real journalists is not the right way to put it, but
where I would
like these huge outlets, and I feel like those are only read by the people who choose to be the absolute most informed, right? Like they're like the 10%. 90% of people are just getting their news from random clickbait on Facebook. So I don't see how this Google News offering is going to change much of that.
It's just completely random. But like the Apple News Pluses of the world should be built into Twitter, if you think about it. Like
right.
You pay.
No, they should. Yeah.
Like Twitter
there should be microtransactions.
Yeah, please.
Microtransactions.
That's never going to happen. There's
I think it will. I think it will.
No way.
Will.
It's been years. That's been decades.
It's been years, but the technology's not there yet. I think the fundamental technology that's going to enable it is going to be blockchain stuff, and that's just not there. It's just not gotten to the point where people have accepted that as a norm.
Wow.
No one uses
that. Wow.
Yeah.
You went there.
I do. I think that's where it's going.
Sure. Actually,
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that microtransactions are going to become just the norm of content consumption on the web. It's that's utopia to me, because this is a whole sidebar, but I don't like the way I don't like the entire ad-driven revenue model, and most journalists do not. But
but in a way, it's one of the greatest democratizations of news and information ever, and I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle of people not wanting to pay for stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's get started. It looks like we had about 20 people, and now we're down to 17. So some people are clearly bored with our ad revenue conversation.
So let's talk about the show. So it was clearly pre-recorded, obviously, Why would you subject yourself to the pressure of doing it live when you don't have to? We started with an intro by Rick Ostro, the SVP of Devices and Services, and he basically set out the theme of Google's devices, these devices being impacted by 2020 and COVID and all that. So there was a clear austerity, I would say, to these products being announced, and I don't think it's well. Did you have any other thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the thoughts that actually struck me was the whole launch night in theme, which we kind of criticized for what, like 15 minutes last time.
Uh-huh.
I actually felt like Rick's intro to me a little bit justified it. It kind of felt really dorky and kind of weird and out of place, since it was supposed to be a launch night in, and then it was kind of like, in the middle of the day, and it seems like so many aspects of the theme kind of got lost. But Rick mentioned how it's been hard within COVID to do normal things like go to the movie theater, and I was like, okay, that's framing this as like a movie night. I was like, okay, I could see that angle a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we very much got the thing that we've been hearing from pretty much every company for any product announcement, or any company anytime they talk to us in commercials, which is pretty much like, in these trying times,
Mm-hmm.
and so it seemed like that was just Google's version of that. It seemed like Rick did it a little bit less cringy than some have done.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it was fitting that they started with the Chromecast. I think the
Yes.
Chromecast is the product that's probably going to be the most relevant to a lot of people right now, given COVID. And so I guess we could start with the Chromecast here on the show.
Yeah, I definitely. So the way they announced it was the $49 product, the 99.
So I guess we could start.
The nine. What was that?
I don't know.
That was the $49 product, $99 product, and the $4.99 and $6.99 product. So they clearly went up in scale. And yeah, like you were saying, this Chromecast Dual TV is going to be popular. And as of yesterday evening, it is sold out in the two colors, the two whimsical Google colors, blue, which is sky, and like a salmony pink called sunrise. We'll talk about the Netflix thing a bit later, but yeah, the leaks are spot on. We have this elongated dongle, which is bigger than any previous Chromecast, and it comes with a voice remote, which everybody has wanted for ages, and maybe it'll deliver the much needed boost to Chromecast as to compete against the likes of Fire TV and Roku.
Yeah, the big news on the software side of things is the revamp, I guess, of Android TV to Google TV, which, interestingly enough, if you dig into the settings of the new Chromecast, you'll actually see under operating system it still says Android TV.
OS.
So yeah, Android TV OS. So it's like, it seems like they're kind of like trying to keep the Android TV branding as like the underlying name of the operating system, and Google TV is this new skin on top of Android TV, which is like kind of similar to what they do with Android on the Pixel, or at least it's similar to how they've handled Android on the Pixel so far, which is that for the first few years, and famously the third year with the Pixel 3, Google didn't mention Android on stage a single time during the Pixel 3 launch, which we pointed out. And what they've kind of done is they've just kind of called it, the Pixel experience, which is the software experience that's built on top of Android. They obviously aren't calling it, they're not saying that the Pixel experience is the name of the operating system, but they're kind of like, it seems like just burying the fact that it's Android a little bit, but still, I think, trying to give a nod to the teams that are building the underlying operating system, which, I don't know, like that's kind of why I think they kept the Android TV OS name in the settings here, is that they're trying to say, like, this isn't a rebrand of Android TV. You know, like if like I think they were trying to avoid that headline, which to be fair, that's a headline that I would have written. You know, that Android, actually I kind of did write that earlier this year when I wrote my rumor earlier this year that Google was going to rebrand Android TV to Google TV. It seems like they're trying to avoid that headline because I think the Android TV team, or the Android team in general, probably takes it a little bit personally when Google is launching products that run their operating system that they've been building for a decade, and you know, and not using the namesake. So it seems like a little bit of a nod to that. But anyways, Google TV it seems really slick, really nice, but altogether, I mean, what to you is the standout feature here? Because I think in general, it seems like, you know, it's very familiar. It's very similar to a lot of the other kind of TV, home, Roku, Apple TV type user experiences. It's basically like, here's all your stuff, all your shows to watch.
Yeah.
You watch in whichever app, or in this case, they're trying to surface the content at the forefront rather than apps, which is, I guess, how Android TV was more centric. What's your standout here?
It's a more people-friendly OS that is really trying to deal with the scenario of people just spending too much time browsing and not actually watching. But so I would say I have two standouts, one for hardware and one for software. So the one for software is not the most positive, I would say. So there's this carousel of things that Google thinks you like. And it's, I don't know, it's very disruptive in terms of from how previously, like on the Shield, for example, you immediately just saw a list of apps and there was something utilitarian about that. But now Google's trying to suggest this recommended content, whether you like it or not. And I think it speaks to how cheap they were able to get the device at with, I don't know, maybe content partnerships and whatnot. But it's really more disruptive than I thought it would be coming from the previous Android TV proper experience. Maybe I'll get used to it, but at least speaking for me personally, I feel like I know what I want to watch each day of the week in terms of what's coming on. So maybe I don't need the additional help of having for you suggestions for me. But yeah, I don't know, the future of like a lot of the future of technology is being recommended things and personalized suggestions, and I'll keep giving it a go in terms of seeing how do the suggestions get better, but day one impressions are a bit more muted. So that's on the software front. As a side note, I do like how it's so quick to access YouTube TV, but again, this is very US only. Since the cord cutting service is just stateside, there's a nice live tab which just shows all your channels. I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, that's me on the software front. The hardware, gorgeous controller. I really enjoy this Daydream-esque controller with simple buttons, with buttons compared to Apple TV and even the older Shield remote. So it's really a pleasant kind of whimsical Google thing. The hardware fits so much with all of made by Google's other products. So that's a real delightful thing. And it's $49. It's insanely cheap. Google, if you're a new YouTube TV subscriber, Google is already giving you a free Chromecast. So these are going to sell so well over the holidays, as it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer upgrade from the $35 Chromecast you bought in the past. And I think Google is going to make a real impact with this.
Yeah. For me on the software side, I guess I have an upside and a downside. My upside on stuff is I feel like if Google can really, I don't have one yet, so I don't know how it works. And honestly, I think to be able to test this, you probably have to sync up like 10 services.
Yeah.
But if you do have a bunch of service subscriptions and you can access it all through this, I guess it's basically a portal. and it's done well, I think that that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people, myself included. I mean, these apps that I typically am opening on Android TV or Xbox or whichever platform I'm using to watch stuff, it can feel like, an endless hole of stuff that's impossible to find anything. So if the recommendations are actually good and they don't feel like advertisements, then I could see it being really helpful. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess on the downside, there, like you said, there is that kind of like simplicity to just, especially if you don't have subscriptions to every single service. I personally only subscribe to like 2, I think. And maybe that's just very not 2020 of me. But yeah, I guess it could be a little bit much, or feel a little bit advertisey.
Yeah, it's only day one. We need to wait and see how good these recommendations get, or just, I don't know, it's day one, it's early, but like YouTube has a very good recommendation algorithm up next. So we'll see how that translates over to everything else you watch that isn't on YouTube.
Yeah, I honestly, personally, in COVID, it's kind of an interesting thing with this, because I feel like half of me is like, this is the perfect product. Another half of me is the guy who recently took his TV out of his living room for the time being, just because I've been zoning out on TV and screens way too much, and I'm trying to break out of that. So I honestly don't even have, like, personally speaking, I don't have a use for this right now, but I'm sure I will whenever I finally get back into watching more television, probably around the time the next season of Mandalorian comes out. Which, by the way, got a little bit of a promo on a lot of their marketing material.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, on the hardware side of things, I think I agree with you. It's really gorgeous. I actually mentioned to one of the people who leads the design team on this product that it's one of the nicer looking products that Google's ever shipped. I really think it's so cool to me.
I do.
The remote, especially the white one, has, it's a very, the snow is very white,
very
and
stark.
It's very stark. It's like, it's almost like transparent or something. It's like the color of a piece of paper. But one of the things that I just found myself so I don't know, intrigued by is the degree of contrast on the controller or the remote. Like, it's very, the buttons are very dark, or the icons on the buttons are very dark, and for some reason that stark black and white contrast, it's kind of, I don't know, dare I say, panda-esque.
Panda-esque. I know Ben, he had some trouble photographing his snow unit. It's really the contrast. It's really an interesting color, and I think that's the one Google is pushing heavily, because all these stores, what you're seeing on store shelves on day one and the weekend and week before is just that white model.
Yep. Anything else on Chromecast before we move on? I think it's a pretty basic product. Oh, the Netflix thing, I guess we should talk about.
Yes.
Why did the Netflix deal sell out?
So yeah, so the Chromecast, the new Chromecast is $49. For $89, you get, for $40 more, you get 6 months of Netflix. Of the standard plan, which is HD streaming, 2 screens, and roughly comes out to $77, I believe, if you bought it individually. So $30 savings, I think. And it works if you're an existing subscriber, Netflix subscriber, which I think is the major thing. So I guess Netflix is a common, they use Netflix all the time, and it was a good way to get $30 off.
Yeah, that actually, at first I thought that it wasn't that great of a deal, because I thought it was only for new subscribers. But I mean, even then, I guess if you just do the math, if you're going to be paying for 6 months of Netflix anyway, then it makes sense. But in my case, if I had known that it was available to existing subscribers, I probably would have picked one up immediately, because that brings down the price of the of the dongle down to like $15 or $20.
Basically, yeah. It's a
By
good,
the way, both the sunset, is it
sunrise.
sunrise and the blue one, they're both back in stock on the Google Store as of this recording.
Ooh, nice. So yeah,
So
they managed
yeah,
that. Yeah, I mean, they'll never release sales numbers, but I am genuinely curious how well this does into the holiday season. I guess we'll see the market share numbers soon enough.
yeah. I'm surprised. One thing on that is I'm surprised they didn't put assistant stuff more at the forefront. It seems like they're focusing for now on the assistant stuff as it relates to actually interacting with your content, which makes sense.
Yeah, I see that.
I was expecting more Nest integrations.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Nest. I'm sure we'll talk about the lack of Nest after this.
Yeah. So I guess that's Chromecast. What do we want to
Nest
dive into
Audio.
next? Nest Audio. It's a
Very,
speaker.
very straightforward. There's really nothing to it. It's a $99 speaker that's going to sound so much better than the original Google Home, and for most people is enough. You don't need to go to a Home Max. Not that many people were going to, but I think somebody had, I forgot if I believe the presenter had the line that why do you need a premium home audio system when you have this, when you can get this, when you can get multiple of these. And I think that's a very interesting play for Google to move into premium audio affordably.
Yeah, I actually remember, it used to be popular that people would actually install premium speakers in their walls, which now is kind of crazy to think about. But the next step to me feels like being able to easily sync these up to your entertainment center, right? Like if I could have 4 of these Google Home or Nest Audios in my living room, and I could easily sync them all up to my television to use as my primary audio out on my television for everything, that would be awesome. Because I mean, I think $400. I guess are they doing bundled deals on these?
Yes, they are. I think you save $20. It's not that much.
Yeah. Yeah, so like $350 for 4 of these really high-end speakers. I think that'd be pretty. It's a pretty good price for a home entertainment system or like a surround sound system.
Yeah. I wonder if how technically feasible from they get the latency down to nothing. So, but yeah, that would be an interesting future platform for these uses for this Nest Audio.
Yeah, but all told, it's basically just half of a Google Home Max crammed into a whole package. And what do you think is going to happen with the Google Home Max, by the way? Do you think that the Google Home Max is going to go away now that you can just buy 2 of these and sync them up, and that's basically the same thing?
Honestly, the longevity of the Home Max is still very surprising in terms of how many did they make? They couldn't have made that many, and they're still selling it. So I don't know how inventory is going on that product. But yeah, it should go away sooner than later.
Yeah, my primary takeaway on the Nest Audio is I think it's a pretty good value for the price. And I think it looks really nice. It's available in 5 different colors, and that's actually something, if I remember correctly, I don't think that leaked. I don't think, well, yeah, all the colors did leak in one way or another. But I guess we just didn't get to see all of them together like this.
Yeah, it's definitely one more.
Really nice.
They look very nice. It's one more color than Google usually does.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's a speaker.
It's a speaker. Yeah, I think that's it for the Nest Audio. It's very short and quaint. Okay, so
Oh,
I
it's the first speaker that is fabric all the way around. First Google speaker.
yes, that yeah, definitely much more than the Nest Mini.
It'll be interesting to see if that stays true going forward with other Nest products, Nest speakers.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Anyways, what's next?
I think we should get the Pixel 4a 5G out of the way first. It is $499, as you already knew. It's a larger Pixel 4a with a better chipset, and 5G, of course. And Verizon is selling a special ultra wideband version. That's $100 more at $599.
For no reason.
For no reason. And okay, I don't. Well, we have to discuss the Pixel 5 in a bit, but I I know a part of me does not want to dismiss it yet, but the other half of me is like, this product does not make sense in Google's lineup whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I still we talked about this last time, but I still can't really wrap my head around this whole lineup and where it fits. And I think it's really hard. It's a really hard year to get a sense of like how well these are going to sell.
Uh-huh.
I think in previous years we kind of had a sense that the XL models were probably selling a lot better, and really there were only two models to pick from, so you kind of knew like as well as they sold, the XL model was going to be the one leading the way, and the small model was kind of the compromise for people that wanted a smaller phone. And yeah, and I think it was also clear kind of year to year that unit sales were down from ever since the Pixel 2. Like it felt like Pixel 3 was slower, or maybe not slower in total growth, or slower in total sales, but maybe like slower growth versus the year before. Like the fastest growth was from the year 1 to year 2, and then the second fastest growth was from year 2 to year 3, and then the third fastest growth was from year 3 to year 4. And so the growth was slowing every year, even though total unit sales were growing, if that makes sense. And I don't know, we kind of had a sense of that, even without knowing the actual numbers. We kind of had a sense for how, since we run like the biggest Pixel fanboy site on the web, we kind of have a sense of the hype level. We have a sense of how much people are talking about it. We had a sense of how much people were criticizing them, which features they liked, which features they didn't. And we kind of had 4 straight years of that, where it was really easy to compare kind of year to year how the sentiment felt and how it seemed like people were responding. But this year just it threw everything off, right? Because the 3A came around last summer, and it threw everything off. First of all, because it apparently sold in huge numbers, and it was a really great value all around, and it kind of was like a departure from the previous few years of I guess just the strategy. I guess.
Yeah, the strategy.
Yeah. And this year it's even weirder, because this is actually an interesting thing we can note that Google actually said during the presentation that the Google Pixel 4a, and this is one of those statements that's like it's hard to interpret because it felt a little bit vague. The exact wording they used was the Pixel 4a is selling faster than the Pixel 3a did. And it's like, what does that actually mean? Does it mean that maybe unit sales haven't caught up yet, but the actual, I guess, number of units per day so far is faster? Is it including the 3A XL model, or is it just the 3A model that they're comparing to? Like there's really different. It's one of those vague statements that you're like, I don't know what that actually means, but it sounds good.
Yeah.
And they said the Pixel 4a is selling faster than the Pixel 3a. So we know that. That's interesting, because the Pixel 3a was the best as far as we knew. I think based on the hints we've gotten on earnings calls, it sounded like it was the best selling Pixel so far in terms of actual units. That would make it logically true then that the Pixel 4a is going to be, if it not already is, the best selling Pixel so far. But with these these two other new phones, the 4A 5G and Pixel 5, I just don't really have a grasp on how much the market or how much people are wanting phones in this category, or how this is going to compare to years prior when Google was going really head to head with the premium Samsung phone or the premium iPhone. Now they're kind of being, I mean, some takes I read were people saying that they're being realistic, and they're saying, well, we can't really take on the duopoly, so we're going to try and take on this middle of the market, and which really is not. I mean, that's the thing. The Pixel 5, I guess you could say that you could argue the Pixel 4a 5G, at least the non-millimeter wave version, is middle of the market. But the Pixel 5 is not really middle of the market anymore, because the mainstream iPhone is selling for $749, and the Galaxy S20 Fan Edition, which is a really stinking baller phone in terms of specs,
and
is
value.
also is $699. So at this $699 price range, we're not really talking like Google's not doing something unique, right? Like if Google had done this before the iPhone 11 was a thing, and Apple phones were $1,000 plus, and the same was true of Samsung phones, then this would be a unique proposition. But now it's like they're not. Google's not the only one doing this, so they're taking on Samsung and Apple at this $699 level, but it's kind of a new category in the market, and it seems like it's the new default category in the market. Maybe not for Apple, because Apple, I presume, is selling way more of the higher end stuff, because that's just their
because they can.
Yeah, because they're able to. But it feels like this $699 is just like the new standard. And so, really, is Google really doing anything unique? I don't know. And even if they, I guess, are in a way, it's like, are they really? Is the Pixel 5 really that compelling of a phone compared to the similar phones from Samsung and Apple at that price range? I guess I don't know. But Pixel 4a 5G, before we get to Pixel 5, I think we can analyze that a little bit more, is in that interesting place, because
the $499 one.
Yeah, the $499 one, because it is, honestly, it's kind of a worse version of the Pixel 5. It's a worse version of the Pixel 5 with a bigger screen, more than it is a better version of the Pixel 4a with a bigger screen. I feel like, because of the 765 processor and the fact that it has 5G, right? Like those are that's the two things that are, going to affect the experience at a fundamental level, and neither of those features are on the regular 4a. So it is interesting. It's in that price range it's definitely the most accessible 5G phone in terms of price. And it has the same processor as Google's new quote unquote flagship, and has the big screen. So I feel like the 4A 5G is the phone. I don't know if it's right to say I feel like it's either found something, a unique place in the market that you and I didn't know existed, in the sense that, like there's maybe buyers that are looking to buy this phone or this kind of phone at this price range that we don't know about, or it's gonna be a failure because people are just gonna flock to whatever the $699 Samsung or $699 iPhone is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's the 4A 5G is the weird one this time around. And we'll see how it does.
It'll be so interesting to see if they ever follow it up, or if it's a distinct one-off, or it's so there's just nothing that came before it in terms of the Google and
right. There's nothing really to compare it to. I mean, what's the closest comparison in the Android space in general? The OnePlus Nord, which isn't available in the US. What else?
Maybe like the rumored upcoming OnePlus Nord-esque phones, maybe, but I don't know. Samsung is
not really. There's nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Samsung's A line. Those.
Yeah, really. The question is do people want 5G? Question mark. is that a thing that people care about?
Not
I mean,
enough this year
I
is
guess
my
what we're
answer.
wondering, you and I are smart enough to know that it's not worth buying, or it's not worth it this year, because we know that the sub-6 networks are fundamentally, I mean, they're not really going to change the game versus LTE in really any actual use case, right? Like with any actual, a millimeter wave, like we talked about, is going to, I think, change the game in some ways, but it's just not, it doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
Basically, right? It exists in stadiums, it exists in concert halls, maybe,
And it exists in specific blocks.
specific blocks of specific cities.
blocks. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like that's less than 1% of the use case, especially with COVID, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
if you're actively or constantly going to football games, basketball games, that kind of thing, then there's a thing there that the 5G is actually going to enable some things, right? Because it's like usually network connections in stadiums in general are pretty awful because everyone is using their phone at the same time, and
Ironically.
it's like you don't even have enough data in there to be able to stream anything, for example. So it's like there are actual practical reasons why having 5G in an athletics stadium or sports stadium would actually make sense.
Yeah.
But no one's going to any games for a long time. Well, I mean, maybe not a long time, but at least 6 months to a year, probably. So, yeah. So this 5G phone, these 5G phones exist, but question is are people going to care? And really, I think the answer is more the determiner of that is going to be how much marketing dollars get poured into this fake, useless technology.
Basically. And the answer is all of it.
And whether or not people fall for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's Pixel 4a 5G. Any other thoughts on
We
that?
shall see how. Nope, none at all.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if
Now.
if this is a new category or if it's going to be followed on. So Pixel 5.
Yes.
I forgot what I was saying earlier. Oh, I guess before we could talk, before we talk about that, let's talk about what sets the Pixel 5 apart. So for those that don't know, Pixel 5 is set apart from the 4a series by the fact that it has wireless charging, and it is a metal body for the most part, which is interesting because this is the first mainstream device to have a metal unibody type, build, and also have wireless charging, which all the Android reporters in Google's briefing were rightfully wondering how that was possible. Surprisingly, it is possible. Well, I guess it's not surprising that's possible, but surprisingly, Google poured whatever engineering dollars they needed into solving this problem. And it's like what, like some, I still haven't, the way Google described it.
Bio-resin.
Yeah, but it's not about the material, right? Like, yeah, it's like,
it's a physical placement. It's
like they physically cut part of the back out, basically, and they put the wireless charging coil in there.
Yeah.
Then they covered it with some kind of bioresin, and then they painted over the whole thing to make it seem like the whole thing is metal, basically.
Yeah. Right? And I don't know if this is working to Google's favor or against it, but the majority of critical reviewers have not touched this phone yet. The vast majority have no idea how it feels, or they just don't know how it feels. Or
it's a bizarre thing. That's actually a good point. Is normally every year reviewers are able to touch and hang out or get their hands on all the phones on the day of the event, and you walk away with dozens of videos and hands-on and stuff, having actually checked out the phone in person, but no one has. And it seems like review units are not shipping out to the press for a little while, and the phones aren't shipping until the end of the month.
In the US, specifically.
So it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
So what else sets the Pixel 5 apart besides the wireless charging?
8 gigs of RAM, which I'm really shocked they already decided to bump it after doing 6 last year. So good on Google. That's whether it's a valid thing for them to have addressed or whether it's just like for the fans, the diehard spec fans, they did it. So yay.
Yep. And it also has 90 hertz,
Yes.
which is a follow-up on the same, which launched for the Pixel 4 last year. What else is there?
It's waterproof, which again, it's
IP68.
more of a security thing.
Yeah, so other than that, it's very similar to Pixel 4a 5G. It has the 6765G. It obviously has 5G. Every single unlocked model has millimeter wave, which why?
Yeah.
David over at Angel Police had a really good rant about that, pointing out that those components are ridiculously expensive, and Google could have dropped the millimeter wave from the unlocked phones and dropped the price by $100 easily.
Yeah. So I guess what we'll see the determination that needs to be made is whether at the end of the year, whether it was worth it for Google in the US to put millimeter wave and get on Verizon, whether that was worth the extra $100. And there's like a gigantic A/B test going on in terms of US adoption versus international adoption of the price. I mean, I know it's not 1-to-1, but it's going to be maybe the Pixel 5 does phenomenally outside the US. But I don't know. I hope the carrier advertising pays off for Google for them to put millimeter wave.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, what is this phone? Who is this phone for? It feels like to me, this phone checks. Maybe you can disagree. Does this phone, with the first 4 Pixel phones, and I think this became actually probably less and less true with every iteration. They didn't feel like phones that were made for the Android community. Right? I mean, one of the things that people complained about every year was that it didn't have enough RAM.
Yeah.
You know, they were on 3 gigs, I think, for the first 2 years, and then 4
gigs. It was
I don't know.
4, yeah. 4.
They eventually went to 6 with the Pixel 4, and now they're at 8. That was one of the big things I saw complaints from the Android community. Another thing was the fingerprint sensor being pulled off of last year's phone. Like Pixel 4 felt like I'm just trying to get a general feel for the phones. The Pixel 4 felt like the Google's last attempt at building like a phone that would appeal to an iPhone buyer. It feels like they betrayed in a way like the Android community in so many ways. Like when that phone was announced, everyone was like, "This is the worst thing ever. I can't believe you didn't put a fingerprint sensor." And it took people like me and David writing articles about how good the Face ID is to convince half the Android community that like it was literally like 15 months ago, 16 months ago, 2 years ago, like less than that we were still having the conversation of whether or not face authentication is better or worse than fingerprint. And most of the Android community, even up past the Pixel 4's launch, was still hard in my phone has to have a fingerprint sensor because face unlock makes no sense because iPhones have face unlock. Sure. And the Pixel 4 did face unlock with no Touch ID. It only had 6 gigs of RAM. It had a small battery. It had like there were just so many things that like the Android community, like all the Android blogs, were crapping on it for, you know. And the first 3 Pixels had similar flaws, but I don't think they were as accentuated as the Pixel 4s were. But this phone, the Pixel 5, maybe you feel differently. It feels like a phone that was made to get well reviewed by Android blogs.
I agree. That I agree with. I think the one note I would add with the Pixel 4 is that the Pixel 4 really felt like Google trying to be Google in that experimental sense, where they try to be futuristic and throw all the nascent technology that isn't ready for prime time yet at the wall. And
but it also had that like premium build that came at the expense of specs. You know what I mean? Like I think
yeah,
that was what peeved the Android community about the Pixel 4 was is a premium build with awesome software, and it came at the expense of hitting the spec sheet right. You
yeah,
know?
that's true. That's very true.
And it feels like the Pixel 5, and I don't know, like I'm trying to look at this at a high level, right? Like it seems like Google, the fact that the Pixel 4 happened proves that Google thought that that route was going to sell more phones than going the route of just pleasing the Android community.
But okay, so my counter to that would be, okay, there's the Android community, and then there's the general people who don't spend more than an hour or two deciding what their next phone is. I'm being flippant with that, but
Sure.
is who has the bigger audience? Sure, by having a well-reviewed phone, you have a well-reviewed phone that people talk about. I think that's like the clear change that they're trying to do this year. That like how they're going to succeed is maybe less on prestige in terms of like we have a flagship, and more on the line that word of mouth. And I I don't know. There's just so many different factors this year, from COVID to people's spending habits maybe changing a tiny bit, and I don't know whether what the mark. I don't know how well it does outside the Android community market you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the point I'm making is I feel like before this phone with Pixel 4, it feels like they had a whiteboarded ideal for what a phone is. Not they weren't thinking about it as much from a business perspective. It was more of Rick trying to play, not Rick specifically, but I just mean like the Pixel team trying to play the iPhone role of let's design something that works really well, that is beautiful, that is,
I
functional, those googly aspects to it too, and even if that comes at the expense of hitting every single spec sheet, let's build a great experience. And I feel like with the Pixel 4, like that was the culmination of that
Sure.
strategy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they kind of they had to reckon with the fact that, okay, maybe the Pixel 4 was a great phone, save for the battery life problems, maybe. I mean, I don't think the battery problems were as much of an issue on the Pixel 4 XL, but anyways, I think that it might have had to reckon with the fact that releasing a phone that's going to be received poorly by the Android community, even if it's a good phone in its own right, is a non-starter for Google, right? Because I think if you don't, I mean, Apple blogs, like the media that covers Apple, they don't care. To them, the Pixel phone is just another one of the Android phones. It doesn't matter what their design philosophy is or what decisions they're making. There's just another Android phone. And it's going to be reviewed as such. And I think with Pixel 4, what Google had to reckon with was like honestly, I think a lot of the reviews were really unfair and maybe were a little bit harsh on it because I think that maybe missed the forest for the trees a little bit. That's not unexpected when it comes to a lot of the Android blogs out there. But I think Google maybe had to realize, like, okay, if we release a phone and the main narrative is the Android media is like, this is crappy compared to the OnePlus insert the blank or the Samsung insert the blank. Like, if that's how the media reception begins, it almost like,
Yeah.
hurts any chance that it could go any further than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but that's just kind of the sense that I've gotten the last couple of years. And it feels like the Pixel 5 was definitely a reset. And it's so interesting seeing from the Android blogs, all the headlines are Google went back to the drawing board and they gave Pixel the reboot that it needed. And all they really did was they ditched some of the I found to be more ambitious features, and they bumped the specs up to appease the Android fans of the in the Android media, and I mean, we don't even know how well the phone runs. Like there's so many things we don't even know. But the narrative has immediately been, wow, Google did it. This is the return to Pixel greatness.
Sure.
And it's like people are saying that and they haven't even used the phone yet. And I feel like that proves my thesis, which is that this year they decided, okay, maybe this kind of this attitude that we've had the last 4 years has been a little bit out of hubris. Maybe trying to play a role that maybe they couldn't. I don't know.
But do they still want the benefits of playing that role, which is the wider market? Are they still trying to achieve that in the Pixel 5? Or are they just trying to carve out a niche and get a marketing monetary win where they can get one? So what do you think?
I think so, in a way, because if you really compare, if Google really wanted to go all in on the right, like let's say the Pixel 4 is they swung to the left, and the left is the kind of Steve Jobs idealism, kind of attitude, and all the way to the right is OnePlus, which is we're just going to spec everything out as much as possible and launch it at the cheapest price. The Pixel 5 feels like a little bit in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it is still kind of trying to cling on to this this premium brand kind of ethos, and they're selling the phone for $699. And if you just compare spec for spec, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is definitely a better phone. Similar specs can be found on OnePlus phones that are $200 cheaper. And so they're definitely holding on to that in a way. And I think there are things that can justify the price, definitely, because I think the Google experience, so to speak, is kind of something that's hard to quantify that I think definitely gives Google a leg up. And there's other things, like these specific, I guess it's part of the Google experience, like these two specific software features that they're launching alongside the Pixel 5, which, by the way, are coming to the older Pixels. So maybe it doesn't justify the price. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's definitely not the Google has definitely not swung the other way, right? They're definitely not being like, okay, screw it, we're just going to pander to whatever the Android blogs want. But they're also kind of maybe toning down some of that. I don't know. I feel like hubris is the right word, right? Like they tried with the Pixel 4, they really tried to build an iPhone alternative, to me, in my opinion, and they just fell short, right? Because where Apple was able to do everything the Pixel 4, I don't know. This whole conversation is probably going to get controversial if I say things too bluntly, but I feel like Apple, for instance, their iPhone 11 or whatever, like it doesn't have battery problems, and it does a lot of fun, like some of the fundamental like hubris-y things that I'm trying to describe with the Pixel 4, like it doesn't have, it's like some of the flaws that Google ended up suffering with the Pixel 4, the competitors haven't. So I don't know. That's kind of me just trying to express how it feels. I don't really have a lot of
there's
data to back up my analysis here, but that's how.
Yeah, in lieu of touching the phones, it just goes a great way. We have to fill in the narrative ourselves, and I don't know whether that's beneficial in the long term or whether this helps the current play that Google's trying to make, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Pixel 5. I'm personally okay. I'll end the show on this note, or we can end the show on this note. The green, the design is awesome. Like,
yes,
I think it's the best looking Pixel so far. This sort of green is so up my alley. Like it's the exact like ideal aesthetic for a phone, in my opinion.
And I feel like Google is confident enough in it looking good that they only offered two colors, black and green.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that they only launched the white 4A 5G on Verizon.
Yeah.
I wonder what the thinking is on that. Why is it white, and why is the white exclusive? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's got to
Yeah.
be a reason. Maybe it was like, well, we can only produce the white. Our yield on the white model has been too low in manufacturing, so
Maybe.
we'll make that the niche product that 1% of people will buy. I feel like that's going to be a collector's item, right? Pixel 4a 5G millimeter wave model in white. Like that's got to be a.
Oh man. Now I
If,
can
if
see
you're
that
if
now.
you're a Google collector, you've got to put it on your. It's going to be like a Nexus Q type thing in the future.
Oh man, that's ambitious. So yeah, yeah, Pixel 5. Everywhere that isn't the US and Canada, I believe, will get it October 15th or around there. And like you said at the top, Pixel 5 in the US is oddly October 29th or later.
Yeah, it's really weird. I
Like
wonder why that happened. It's very rare for a phone to launch
not
a North American company launching a phone outside of North America first.
yeah, it's like yeah, it's just going to be interesting how they end up. The inside baseball being whether reviewers in the US and Canada don't get it on October 15th. That's like the inside
They
baseball.
have to. They have to get it before October 15th because if it's after, I mean, after October 15th, there's going to be 1,000 videos on the internet, and I don't know. Like they've got it. They have to get units before the 15th, and maybe 15th will be the embargo date or something.
Mm.
Um,
But
so
yeah, it's the timing is going to be very. Yeah, and it just contributes to this year being an odder year than most.
yeah, it's definitely unusual. Do we have any, I guess, topics we want to talk about before we go? What was it that before the show that I said we were going to chat about before?
Daydream.
Oh yeah, Daydream. Let's end with that because that just happened this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Daydream is killed.
Yes.
Google. Well, our headline could have been Google kills Daydream, but we
You
dropped
can
the ball.
you can still use those people who love their Daydream View headsets and the Pixel 3 and still have the Pixel 3 can continue using it somewhat, maybe, kinda. But yeah, Google is ending support, Android 11 specifically, and support for Daydream. The Pixel 4 already did not have it, but it's the I know you're more bullish or bearish, I forgot. Bullish on VR being a platform, but I think you would agree with me that this idea of consumer VR, where the phone is the driver, is definitely coming to a close for the time being, in favor of dedicated devices.
Yeah, it's clear to me that the I think there is a place for consumer VR. I just don't think that the phone is good enough.
Yes.
Like I think that there's a threshold that has to be met for VR that to make it immersive enough, to make it to reduce motion sickness enough, and other things that I
Yeah.
think that they realize that the phone, while it's an interesting tech demo, it's not something people are going to actually use.
Yeah, it was only well suited for watching VR video. That's basically it. Like
even then, in my experience, putting a low resolution screen,
yeah, it was low res.
Eyeballs, it was not just low res but painful.
No, I agree there.
And the other problem that they're running into now is the Oculus Quest and similar standalone headsets, which are really, really good now, are in the $200, $300 range. So they're cheap enough that it's not stupid to buy one in addition to your phone if you really want VR.
If you really want VR.
Yeah, and on the note of bullish versus bearish, I'm bullish on VR in a sense, but I think that there's more future in AR headsets that provide VR experiences. I think because right now, one of the things that makes the Oculus Quest, for example, so good to me is the pass-through features. which basically makes it an AR headset.
Yeah.
It's like you've got VR headsets that have AR kind of pass through as a side feature, which makes the Oculus Quest because it's great because if you walk outside of your boundary, you can see the outside world, and so you can kind of go in and out pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then you have they don't really exist yet, but we're gonna have AR headsets that can convert into full VR experiences whenever you want, which I think the latter is going to be where things really start to take off. For now, it's just a niche gaming thing. I think it's like a gaming community thing. VR is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fine, but
for now, it's not mass
doesn't make
market
sense for everyone's phone to have it on their phone operating system.
Yeah,
built in.
Yeah. So farewell, Daydream. I hope they keep the band alive.
And farewell, Alphabet Scoop listeners.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. This has been a fun recap of Launch Time In. We will see. Looking forward, I guess one of the things we're looking at is Google going to be launching some Nest hardware? Because we've been hearing little rumors from birdies and sources that have said that we're expecting maybe a Google Wi-Fi revamp. We might be expecting a new like Nest cams or Nest doorbells, stuff like that. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I think that's what we're looking for. I mean, obviously, Launch Time In featured a lot of Nest branded products, but there were no. I guess the speaker maybe is smart home, but I think when I think of smart home, I think more of like, the Protect or the doorbell or the outdoor cam or whatever. And I think that category of products might get a separate launch event sometime between now and next October.
Because it's long overdue. Seriously, the cam lineup is so old.
Yeah, Nest stuff is definitely overdue for a revamp, which we're excited for because I really think that that's the future of Google's hardware division is that stuff. So thank you everyone for tuning in to Alphabet Scoop. We record this podcast every week. You can find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, and more. And you can also listen directly over at 9to5google.com where we will be uploading the show in full
soon.
And what?
No, go ahead.
Soon. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.